basic themes that guide us as citizens. So I'm going to briefly review 7 themes of Catholic social teaching. We've heard of them all, one way or another so far, so this is a review, just to maybe itemize them and take a look at them in a more systematic way. The first theme, these are not in any priority or anything like that, they're just in no particular order. Number 1, the life and dignity of the human person. The Catholic Church proclaims that human life is sacred. Human life is a gift by God. God gives life and only God can take life. And that the dignity of the human person is the foundation for the moral vision of society. And it talks about some ways that in our society today, human life is under direct attack. I've already mentioned abortion and euthanasia, cloning, embryonic stem cell research, intentional targeting of civilians in war, terrorist acts, the use of the death penalty. We believe that every person is precious, that people are more important than things, and that the measure of every institution is whether it threatens or enhances the life and dignity of the human person. It's a brief summary. What we would mean when we talk about the life and dignity of the human person. As Catholic educators, we ought to be inculcating that value in young people as a contribution to their formation of conscience. Secondly, the call to family, community, and participation. This could be broken down into different components, actually. The person is not only sacred, but also social. How we organize our society, our economic policies, our politics, in law and policy directly affects human dignity and the capacity of individuals to grow in community. Some of the issues, marriage and family life. In the United States, the whole question of gay unions, gay marriages is, I'm not sure. As an American, I read between the lines of what the bishops were saying in the video and here, and see a number of issues that they're hitting. But it's not just any certain issues; it's the principles as they apply. How do they apply to the sacredness of family life in Singapore, to our understanding of marriage? As a parish priest for a number of years, I saw over a course of time that we have, I would say, 80% of people who are coming to be married in the church were already living together for any number of years before they came for a church wedding. What does it say about how we value marriage and family life? How does our view of marriage and family life differ from that of the society in which we live? This isn't all about challenging the government and policies. It's challenging some of the unspoken principles that are a part of the society and the culture. Marriage, essential institutions. We believe people have a right and a duty to participate in society, seeking together the common good and well-being of all, especially the poor and the vulnerable. Rights and responsibilities. The Catholic tradition teaches that human dignity can be protected and a healthy community can be achieved only if human rights are protected and responsibilities are met. Therefore, every person has a fundamental right to life and a right to those things required for human decency. In the U.S. context here, read universal health care coverage. Okay? I'm just showing you how these themes are played out in our context and they'll be played out differently in yours. Corresponding to these rights and duties and responsibilities, our duties and responsibilities to one another, to our families, and to a larger society. Okay? We can't just focus on what our rights are. What are our responsibilities? For every right, there flows a responsibility. I don't have time to give you lots of examples of that. Option for the poor and the vulnerable. A basic moral test is to assess how our most vulnerable members are faring. A number of years ago, it was in the 1980s, I don't remember the exact year, but the U.S. bishops wrote a rather long pastoral letter. We all joke about it. It wasn't a letter, it was a book on economic justice for all. And it took Catholic moral teachings and applied them to the area of economy and use of money and all those things. And they had a very strong statement in there. The morality of our economic policies should be based on the impact they have on those who are at the bottom of the economic levels, the lowest levels of the economy. You know, we had an economic downturn. We can't say recession. We can't say all those other nasty words. We had an economic downturn. We're now told by many governments of the world that the economy is coming back. Don't tell somebody who lives in the slums of Manila or on the streets of Washington, D.C. That the economy has recovered, because it hasn't. You know, people who were poor then are poorer now, and they don't recover when the stock market starts to go back up again. Okay? So we can feel very comfortable economically and say that everything's okay, but our tradition says, how are the most vulnerable members faring? In a society marred by deepening divisions between rich and poor, our tradition recalls the story of the Last Judgment. The sheep and the goats. I was hungry, you gave me to eat. Thirsty, you gave me to drink. Naked, you clothed me, etc. And instructs us to put the needs of the poor and vulnerable first. The dignity of work and the rights of workers. I think one of the best things ever released under the signature of Pope John Paul II was his document, the encyclical on work. He says that in our work, we share in the creative activity of God. What was God's work? Creation. Our work contributes to God's ongoing work of creation. So to recognize the dignity of our work as well as the rights of workers. Now, this is one of the longest parts of our social teaching, going all the way back to Leo XIII, as you saw, and still applies today. So work, then, is more than just a way of making a living. It's a form of continuing participation in God's creation. If the dignity of work is to be protected, then the basic rights of workers must be respected. The right to productive work, to decent and fair wages, to the organization and joining of unions, to private property, and to economic initiative. You heard before in the introduction that we had,
what is economic initiative?
Economic initiatives that, like example, entrepreneurship, you want to start a business, you want to invest in areas.
To
control your finances. So that would be another example too. Jeanette mentioned that before that I was director of young adult ministry, roughly young people ages 18 to 35. And I remember we had a seminar conference in the diocese, and it was on, I think it was entitled Live to Work or Work to Live. And it dealt with the whole question from a point of view of scriptures and Catholics. Do we work to live, or do we live to work? It's very It created a huge conversation, and people talked about it for years afterwards. It really hit the experience, especially of young people just entering the workforce. Solidarity. This is very much related to what we were talking before about common good. We are one human family, whatever our national, racial, ethnic, economic, or ideological differences. We are our brothers and sisters' keepers. Many people in the world today don't believe that. We had I won't mention his name, but we had a president in the United States a couple presidents ago who said basically it was everybody's responsibility to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Okay? You're not doing well? Okay. We'll cheer you on. We'll pray for you even. But it's your responsibility to pick yourself up. We don't have a responsibility for you. That's not Catholic teaching. We are our brothers and sisters' keepers wherever they may be. Loving our neighbor has global dimensions. We can speak about globalization and talk about all of the things that are wrong with it, but part of the global consciousness is that I can't just take care of myself here in Singapore. I also have a responsibility to my brother and sister in Israel, in Iran, in Pakistan, when there's flooding. I was pleased to see that even when you open up Google, there's a place to donate to victims of flooding in Pakistan. I'm not sure it's the source where I would put my money to get it to Pakistan, but at least it's reminding people that they have a responsibility. At the core of the virtue of solidarity, notice this, we're now calling solidarity a virtue. And besides justice, prudence, temperance, faith, hope, charity, we now speak of other things as virtues. At the core of the virtue of solidarity is the pursuit of justice and peace. Pope Paul VI taught, if you want peace, work for justice. You've probably seen that on a banner before. The gospel calls us to be peacemakers. Our love for all of our brothers and sisters demands that we promote peace in a world surrounded by violence and conflict. So we support all efforts to work for peace wherever it may happen to be. And number 7, care of God's creation. We show our respect for the Creator by our stewardship of creation. Care for the earth is not just an Earth Day slogan, it is a requirement of our faith. We are called to protect people and the planet living our faith in relationship with all of God's creation. This environmental challenge has fundamental moral and ethical dimensions that cannot be ignored. Okay. So, it's not just a trendy thing to go green or be ecological or whatever you want to call it. It's a responsibility of living out our Catholic faith. These principles are then to be translated into action for our own lives and especially into the formation of conscience for our young people. So I just leave you with these questions because my intent was that we were going to discuss them, but according to my watch, we have 1 minute left. How does the challenge of faithful citizenship, apply to the social and political reality of Singapore today? We did some of that a little bit. What is the role of Catholics as citizens in Singaporean society? Which of the principles of Catholic social teaching speak to the circumstances of our times? And I would add for you, how can I, through my teaching, impart the rich tradition of Catholic social teaching to my students? Thank you very much. I'd be happy to stick around and answer any of your questions, but I also want to honor your time.